Hello, my name is Duncan, and for my book vlog, I read All the President's Men by Carl Bernstein and Bob Woodward. It's 336 pages, and I have never read this book before this class, nor have I seen the film. I think right from the beginning of this book, one of the biggest lessons for young journalists, such as ourselves, to take away from it is just simple persistence and perseverance. Obviously, so in the book, as they uncover arguably the biggest scandal in American political history, the Woodward and Bernstein struggle a lot with sourcing, which I know a lot of us have already and will throughout the course of the semester, because the truth is sometimes, particularly on contentious topics, people don't want to be associated with stories, don't want to speak for stories, and have their names wrapped up with them. And I mean, this is that situation on steroids. But Woodward and Bernstein persevere and find very unique methods for sourcing and for confirming information. I think a perfect example throughout the book, but particularly in the beginning, is the Deep Throat character, this anonymous informant who appears to work or have worked somehow with Nixon or within the Republican Party and knows almost everything that's going on behind the scenes, but he refuses to give any new information, and he doesn't want to be named or recognized by the journalists. And despite this issue or seemingly useless dead end, Woodward turns Deep Throat into this source, this untraditional source, in that he confirms information with him, doesn't get new information, but is still able to use him as a valuable resource throughout their sourcing process for the various stories they put out. Jumping now to the middle of the book and actually continuing with Deep Throat, because I think the character of Deep Throat himself is enough for a full book talk, and he's a fascinating character and true person in history. But he has this famous line from the middle of the book where he as Woodward and Bernstein are struggling not only with sourcing, but just to find any new leads. Deep Throat encourages the journalists to follow the money. He says, "Details matter, always follow the money." And I think this line, it's a very simple idea, but also very helpful. I know for those of us who are in JNL 221 right now, data journalism is huge and reveals a lot that sometimes people don't. And in the end, money is the way that Woodward and Bernstein are able to track and eventually tie the Nixon administration and his campaign to the Watergate scandal and the burglars themselves, because of the money that's flowing between the various parties. And looking for irregularities in campaign finance reports. And I think that this is yet another example where when people can't reveal new information to you, sometimes numbers are your best bet. And I think regardless of what, your beat is as a journalist, there's always ways that money, or if not money, the numbers come into play and can tell a story by themselves. So the way that these two men were able to not only overcome sort of a weak pool of sources, but also find new ways to gather information, in this case through money, is very valuable for all of us as journalists. As the book comes to an end, both journalists reflect a lot on their experience, the sort of 3-year ordeal, right from 1972 when Watergate first breaks, all the way until Nixon's finally resigns in 1974, and in the aftermath of Nixon's resignation, and there's sort of jump to fame and to international attention. Both Woodward and Bernstein reflect on the work that has to be done as journalists, even after a story goes out in print or online. And as journalists, when we're writing about important issues, there's often backlash, there's legal issues, there's follow-up stories that are important and necessary. And I mean, in a lot of ways, Woodward and Bernstein, when they started this project, the Watergate project, they didn't think that they were going to be tying the sitting president of the United States to a burglary attempt on the Democratic National Committee. But that's just how it goes. And they start with this little story that turns into another story, and then another story, and then a big one, and then finally it takes them all the way to the promised land. And I think as student journalists, we need to think beyond publication and prepare to defend or refine our work when challenged, but then also continue that work even once a story is finished, because the truth is a story is not really ever finished. This novel is full of phenomenal quotes, so it's really hard to just pick one. I think the best one, though, for our reporting class is Carl Bernstein's definition of good reporting. He says, I think all good reporting is the same thing, the best attainable version of the truth. And while that seems like a sort of simple definition, I think it's important to think about the context of their time and what this meant. This story, the story that Bernstein Woodward broke, changed journalism. And I think in our current age, where we often have issues with misinformation and some media that is willing to publish things that are not true for financial gain or for attention, essentially, I think it's really important to remember that truth, that all reporting at the end of the day, all good reporting at the end of the day is the same thing. It's truth that is supposed to educate the masses and keep power in check. And I think this book is a perfect example of this. I had a really good time reading this. Actually, it reads in a lot of ways like a thriller. So I'm going to give it a 9 orange out of 10 on the orange scale. Very, very quick read, goes down very fast.